Oregon lawmakers will gather at the Capitol Monday in person.
We need to spend as little time in the building as possible.
Senate President Peter Courtney says during COVID-19, it's tricky. Lawmakers have to vote on bills in person because of the state's constitution.
That's the way to make sure that individuals aren't all over the state, or maybe even out of state, and they're making laws that affect all of us.
The Oregon Health Authority is working on ways to maintain distance during the vote. Legislators, meanwhile, have been meeting virtually in committees and special public hearings like this one ahead of Monday's special session. Governor Kate Brown asked lawmakers to consider $800 million in relief for people suffering financially from the pandemic and wildfires. One proposal would extend the ban on evictions through June.
Currently, about 15% of tenants statewide have not been able to pay their rent since March 2020.
Ron Garcia is president-elect of Rental Housing Alliance Oregon. He testified Saturday in support of a proposed relief package for both renters and landlords.
When you only own one or two units and those tenants have not paid, you're losing 100% of your income.
The bill would give $50 million to struggling renters and $150 million to pay Oregon landlords up to 80% of what they're owed. Landlords would have to forgive the other 20%, which is not their first choice.
80% is far better than nothing, but laying an increased financial burden on housing providers with no requirement for renters to pay anything seems like a lopsided solution and sets a concerning precedent. Will this be the go-to solution?
Both renters and small landlords need help now.
Right now, our neighbors are facing the horrendous choice between paying rent or buying food.
Eviction is a fulcrum between homelessness and housing, and it's not easy to reverse that process.
Another big proposal would look at reopening Oregon schools and protect them from COVID-19 liability.
Research has shown schools are safe.
Restaurants could also get help they've demanded for months, with new rules allowing takeout cocktails. There'd also be a new cap on fees from third-party delivery platforms like DoorDash and Grubhub.
People need it right now, these things that we're talking about.
Senator Courtney has spent more than 3 decades in the Oregon legislature. He says leaders are elected for times like this.
These special sessions I will never, ever forget, and they will mark me for life.
Senator Courtney said not every senator is going to be there. About 5 or so may not show up, but he would not speculate if it was because of concerns over COVID-19. We'll be following what happens for you and update you on KGW.com. I'm Galen Etlin for KGW News.